We're not discussing a small dispute over where to sit at a state dinner, for example.
There is a sense amongst the whole family that they just don't want the dramas anymore.
Every chair had been placed, every name checked, every movement rehearsed. Then Prince George noticed something that stopped him cold. His assigned seat beside Catherine had been moved. In its place was another arrangement, one Camilla had personally pushed forward. George did not argue quietly. He stopped the entire royal luncheon before it could begin, forcing the family to confront what that change really meant. He picked up the place card, walked over to Catherine, and placed it right back beside her. Like this video if you want more royal deep dives, and subscribe to Vintage Expose so you never miss what happens next. The stolen place card. The room was set for absolute perfection. A formal royal luncheon is never just a meal. It is a strictly controlled display of rank, order, and carefully orchestrated family optics. Crystal glasses gleamed under the chandeliers. Gold-rimmed place settings lined the heavy mahogany table. Senior aides walked the floor with clipboard checklists, ensuring every single chair was positioned to the millimeter. Prince George stepped into the room holding his mother's hand. He expected the same familiar setup they'd agreed on days before. A safe space. A seat right next to Catherine, Princess of Wales. For an 11-year-old boy carrying the weight of a future crown, sitting beside his mother wasn't a matter of royal privilege. It was his anchor. It was the one spot where he could lower his shoulders, breathe, and feel like a son before feeling like an heir. Then he reached his assigned spot. George looked down at the hand calligraphic card resting on the crisp linen napkin. The name on the card wasn't his. His eyes scanned the long table. His actual place card had been banished several feet down, pushed into the middle of senior working royals. It was a deliberate buffer zone designed to separate him from Catherine. Catherine paused beside him. She saw the sudden tension in her son's posture. She looked down at the altered arrangement and understood the subtle insult immediately. This was no mistake by the household staff. Staff do not alter seating plans approved by the Princess of Wales without direct orders from higher up. Queen Camilla stepped forward smoothly. Her expression was calm, controlled, almost soothing. She offered a brief, practiced explanation describing the revision as a much more suitable arrangement for a formal gathering. She framed it as a necessary step in George's public education, a way to force him into independent royal conversation among older adults. Camilla had personally authorized the change just 20 minutes before the doors opened. She expected compliance. She expected a quiet, well-mannered boy to accept the shift and take his assigned place without causing a scene. She completely miscalculated. George didn't cry, he didn't whine, he didn't look to the aides for guidance. Instead, he did something that stunned every adult standing in that dining hall. He reached out, picked up his altered place card from down the table, and walked right back over to Catherine. With quiet, unyielding precision, he set the card flat on the table, right next to his mother's plate. He looked directly at his grandfather, King Charles, and spoke with absolute firmness. He refused to sit anywhere else. The room went dead silent. Footmen froze in mid-stride. Prince William stepped in closer, his jaw set tight, backing his son's stand completely. The royal luncheon had come to a grinding halt before a single drink was served. And all because a future king refused to let someone strip away his mother's side. The Windsor precedent. To understand why a simple seating card caused an absolute standstill, you have to look back at what happened 3 weeks prior behind the thick stone walls of Windsor Castle. The confrontation at the luncheon wasn't a random sudden outburst. It was the explosive climax of a silent, bitter campaign that had been quietly brewing between Queen Camilla and the Wales family for months. It started during a smaller private family dinner at Windsor. Before the senior royals arrived, the household staff brought out informal seating drafts for a series of upcoming state receptions and summer gatherings. Catherine reviewed the papers and noticed a subtle, recurring pattern. In almost every upcoming event blueprint, George was systematically placed away from her. He was being bracketed between older courtiers, senior dukes, and distant relatives. When Catherine raised the issue with the household planners, Camilla stepped into the conversation. She didn't deny her involvement. She owned it completely. Camilla slid George's physical place card several inches across the layout board right in front of Catherine. She looked Catherine in the eye and delivered a line that sliced through the room like a razor blade. She told Catherine that George could not always be treated as Catherine's little boy when he was actively being prepared to be the King of England. She argued that keeping him glued to his mother's side at official functions was hindering his development. She claimed it made him look overly dependent and weak in front of the court. The implication was brutal and direct. Camilla was publicly questioning Catherine's parenting style. She was implying that Catherine's protective maternal instincts were actively getting in the way of state duty. Catherine did not raise her voice. She did not throw a temper tantrum. She calmly reached out, took the place card, and slid it back directly beside her name. She looked Camilla dead in the eye and reminded her of a fundamental truth. George was her child long before he belonged to the institution or the public crown. She made it clear that decisions regarding his emotional well-being and developmental pacing belonged exclusively to her and William, not to the Queen Consort. No screaming match followed, but the cold, icy silence that descended over Windsor that evening marked a point of no return. William arrived at the tail end of that conversation. He saw the flushed anger on his wife's face and his stepmother's rigid stance. When they got home, Catherine confessed her deepest fear to William. This wasn't about table manners or guest lists. Camilla was systematically trying to assert authority over George's upbringing, using protocol as a weapon to chip away at Catherine's influence. Senior staff briefed Charles on the Windsor argument that very night. In typical fashion, the king chose to ignore it. He brushed it off as minor family friction and stayed silent, hoping it would simply blow over. That silence was a fatal mistake. Camilla took Charles's lack of intervention as a green light to push harder. Catherine, on the other hand, made a quiet, unbreakable resolve. She promised herself that if George ever felt uncomfortable with these forced separations, she would never force him to bow to appearances to keep the peace. She would back her son 100%. And 3 weeks later, at the royal luncheon, that exact promise was tested in front of the entire monarchy. The stand at the table. Back at the luncheon, the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. The formal meal remained completely frozen. George stood tall beside the chair next to Catherine, his hand resting firmly on the polished wood backrest. He refused to sit down in the altered spot, and because the future heir was standing, no one else in the room could sit either. Camilla attempted to salvage her authority. She stepped closer to George, adjusting her tone to sound stern yet matronly. She told him that royal seating was strictly governed by rank and duty, not personal preference. She explained that as his future public responsibilities grew, he would have to learn to sit where protocol placed him, regardless of who was beside him. It was a classic palace guilt trip, designed to make an 11-year-old feel like he was failing his royal obligations. George didn't falter. He looked up at Camilla and asked a simple, cutting question that stripped away all her pretense. He asked why his seat had been placed next to his mother on the official morning seating chart, only to be moved right before the meal began. He wanted to know who had ordered the change after his mother had already approved the table. The child had seen right through the manipulation. He wasn't fighting against royal protocol. He was fighting against a sneaky, last-minute manipulation of that protocol. Catherine stepped in immediately, her voice dropping to a low warning register. She politely but fiercely asked Camilla to refrain from putting an 11-year-old boy in the position of having to defend wanting to sit next to his own mother. The maternal protective aura in the room was overwhelming. William moved up directly behind George. He placed a steadying hand near his son's shoulder, making his presence felt. He looked across the table at King Charles and spoke with icy clarity. He said George had made his position clear, and as far as the Prince of Wales was concerned, the discussion was officially over. Camilla was cornered, but her pride refused to let her yield easily. She admitted openly to the room that she had personally requested the seat alteration. She doubled down on her argument, claiming it was done out of genuine concern for George's future independence. She insisted that separating him from Catherine at formal events was a necessary step in preparing him for the harsh realities of public life. The excuse fell completely flat. It exposed the fact that she had gone over William and Catherine's heads to impose her own philosophy on their child. King Charles knew he was standing on the edge of a massive internal disaster. The sight of his wife arguing with his son, his daughter-in-law, and his grandson in front of household staff was an utter catastrophe. Charles slowly took off his reading glasses. The smooth, diplomatic smile was completely gone from his face. He turned away from Camilla and looked directly at the senior household aide holding the leather-bound master event folder. The king demanded to see the original official seating plan submitted and signed off earlier that morning. The game of subtle palace manipulation was officially over. It was about to become a matter of absolute royal authority. The audit of authority. When King Charles demanded the official event binder, the entire dynamic in the dining room shifted instantly. This was no longer a personal family spat over table preferences. It was a formal audit of power inside the royal household. Senior aides moved forward nervously, handing the leather folder to the monarch. Charles flipped open the first tab, the master seating diagram approved by the Prince and Princess of Wales's office 3 days prior. There it was, clear as day. Prince George's name was listed in bold ink directly to the right of Catherine, Princess of Wales. Charles then turned to the second page, the revised layout that had been printed and distributed just 30 minutes before the luncheon began. In that version, George's name had been erased from Catherine's side and placed far down the table, sandwiched between two distant courtiers. The king looked up from the pages. His face was stern. He looked directly at Camilla and asked a blunt, razor-sharp question. He asked why an approved seating plan involving the second heir to the throne had been overridden without the knowledge or consent of the boy's parents. Camilla tried to minimize the move. She argued that, as queen consort, she had ultimate oversight of household protocol during events hosted under her roof. She claimed it was a minor routine adjustment meant to optimize the flow of the room and encourage better conversation among the guests. William could barely contain his fury. He pointed out that altering the placement of a young prince isn't a minor adjustment. It was a direct breach of parental boundary. George is not just a high-ranking royal asset to be shifted around a chessboard. He is a child under the direct guardianship of the Prince and Princess of Wales. By making the change behind their backs, Camilla had crossed a line from royal duty into personal disrespect. Catherine stood in composed, rigid silence, letting the visual evidence speak for itself. She didn't need to argue. The paper trail proved that a trap had been laid for her son, and George had been brilliant enough to spring it wide open. King Charles evaluated the situation with cold political realism. He knew that if he backed Camilla's unauthorized change, he would cause a massive permanent rift with William and Catherine. He would also be publicly endorsing the idea that an 11-year-old child should be stripped of his mother's comfort for no valid state reason. Charles made his ruling on the spot, his voice firm and absolute. He declared that no alterations regarding Prince George's positioning at any private or semi-private family gathering would ever be made without the explicit, advance approval of William and Catherine. He flatly rejected Camilla's revised plan. The king pointed to the original blueprint and ordered the footman to restore the table immediately. An aide quickly rushed forward, took George's place card, and set it firmly beside Catherine's plate. George took his seat. William sat down beside him. Camilla accepted the ruling in complete silence, but the utter humiliation of being publicly overruled by her husband in front of the entire family left a mark that no polite dinner conversation could ever erase. The post-luncheon reckoning. The formal meal eventually proceeded, but it was an absolute exercise in strained, uncomfortable endurance. Every clink of a silver fork against china sounded like a thunderclap in the quiet room. King Charles made polite, superficial small talk about weather and charitable schedules. William kept his answers brief and professional. Camilla barely touched her food, her eyes fixed straight ahead, sitting with the heavy weight of a total political defeat. George sat quietly beside Catherine, eating his meal with flawless manners, fully aware that he had just fought a battle and won. When the last dessert plates were finally cleared, the royal party disbanded with unprecedented speed. There were no lingering coffees in the drawing room, no casual family catch-ups. Everyone retreated immediately to their respective private suites to process the damage. Camilla retired alone to her private sitting room, shutting the heavy oak doors firmly behind her. She was reportedly deeply shaken, not just by George's defiance, but by how quickly and completely Charles had sided with William and Catherine over her. She had tried to assert her dominance as the matriarch of the firm, only to have her authority publicly clipped in front of household staff and senior royals. Meanwhile, back in their private apartments, William and Catherine sat down with George. Catherine gently hugged her son and thanked him for his courage in speaking his mind, but she also offered him a crucial piece of maternal wisdom. She told him that while she would always stand by him, he should never feel it was his job to fight adult political battles or protect her status inside the family. She wanted him to be a child, free from the toxic burden of palace power struggles. George looked at his mother and gave an answer that blew both his parents away. He told her he wasn't trying to protect her status. He was protecting his own right to choose where he felt safe. The boy already possessed an uncanny, instinctive understanding of personal boundaries, a trait that many adult royals take a lifetime to learn. Later that afternoon, King Charles summoned Prince William for a strictly private meeting. No aides, no advisors, just a father and a son. Charles looked exhausted. He asked William a deeply personal, painful question. He asked if William and Catherine genuinely believed that he and Camilla were actively trying to distance George from his mother. William didn't offer a polite, sugar-coated answer. He told his father that when last-minute seating changes are made behind their backs to isolate an 11-year-old boy, it certainly looks like an intentional strategy. He warned Charles that any further attempts to interfere with how they raise their children would result in a complete withdrawal from family events. The message was clear. The Waleses were not playing games. Charles realized that he couldn't afford to lose William, Catherine, and George. They were the absolute future and survival of the modern British monarchy. If forced to choose between supporting Camilla's overreaching protocol demands or protecting his relationship with his heir, Charles knew what he had to do. He promised William that a permanent official boundary would be set in stone immediately. The new law of the court. The ultimate fallout from the stopped luncheon went far beyond a single meal or a moved chair. It permanently altered the power structure inside the royal household. Within 48 hours of the incident, King Charles issued a strict, new internal directive to all household staff, event planners, and private secretaries. The new rule was absolute. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis are under the exclusive absolute jurisdiction of the Prince and Princess of Wales. No senior royal, including Queen Camilla, has the authority to modify, adjust, or alter their schedules, seating placements, or public exposure without the written consent of William and Catherine. State protocol would still strictly dictate formal appearances like trooping the color or state funerals. But at every private, semi-private, or family-focused engagement, the emotional needs and parental choices of the Wales family will take total precedence over arbitrary court traditions. The news of the luncheon confrontation eventually leaked out to the broader public, as palace secrets inevitably do. News outlets and royal commentators quickly picked up on the story. The public reaction was overwhelmingly decisive. People didn't view George's actions as the behavior of a spoiled or bratty child. They saw it as a deeply touching, heroic display of loyalty from a young boy standing up for his mother during a difficult time. The image of an 11-year-old future king calmly picking up his place card and placing it back next to Catherine struck a powerful chord worldwide. It solidified the public's deep affection for Catherine and proved that her children possess a strong, grounded moral compass. For Camilla, the episode served as a permanent, humbling lesson. She realized that trying to force traditional, cold, old-school court tactics onto the new generation of royals would backfire spectacularly every single time. The modern monarchy cannot be run through fear, cold protocol, or subtle manipulation. At the very next major family gathering held at Windsor, the seating arrangement was checked hours before the guests arrived. Prince George's name card sat firmly, securely, and permanently right beside Catherine's. No one dared to move it. Camilla walked past the table, looked at the card, and kept walking without saying a word. When George arrived, he saw his seat waiting for him. He offered a small, quiet smile to his mother, pulled out the chair, and sat down right where he belonged. In standing his ground over a simple place card, Prince George did much more than save his seat at a luncheon. He protected his childhood, defended his mother, and sent an unmistakable message to the entire court about the kind of king he will one day become. He proved that duty will never be allowed to erase humanity. So tell me, who do you think was right in this situation? Was Prince George justified in stopping the luncheon to stand beside his mother, or should royal protocol always come first? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another royal update. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.